We will answer as many of these questions as possible during the Q&A session following the presentations. Finally, to make the slides clearer on the laptops, please maximise them using the double-ended arrow on the right-hand side. Our speaker today is Sue Riley from WRAP, and we also have a guest speaker, Will Prestwich from the Co-op, who is going to talk to us about their collaborative approach to their work on product life in crisps. Will works on analysing waste within the business and making recommendations for improvements. He will also stay on the line for the question and answer session at the end. Sue's main focus is in consumer food waste prevention, coming from a food industry background. She has worked in product processing and package development, providing technical and quality roles in food manufacturing, and was general manager of an advisory service business before joining WRAP. On the right-hand side of this screen, you'll see an overview of this webinar. In the next hour, we will talk to you about why we have an interest in product life, discuss our recent work on product life, including our findings and recommendations, then talk about how businesses could go on about implementing our recommendations. Plus, as mentioned previously, there'll be an opportunity for Q&A. I'll now hand over to Sue, who will kick off with our objectives for this session.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you to Helen for the introduction. So in terms of our objectives for this session, essentially we wanted to take the opportunity to explain to you our focus on product life, which we consider to be an opportunity for food waste prevention. We also wanted to highlight our recent work on product life and the resulting recommendations that came from that, plus most importantly to encourage those working in the industry to take action. The court-hold commitment is a responsibility deal to improve resource efficiency and reduce the carbon impact of the UK grocery retail sector. WRAP's responsible for the agreement, which has 3 targets, and these are packaging optimisation, supply chain waste prevention, and household food waste prevention. Phase 3 of the agreement will be coming to an end in December 2015, and of course our primary objective is about achieving our targets, although we do recognise that we have limited time now and that some actions that can be taken are longer term, especially with regards to product life. So we also wanted to use this session as a way of helping you to gear up for Court-Hold 2025, which is the next voluntary agreement, and if possible help you and your businesses to reap some of the benefits, which can be both financial and environmental, sooner rather than later. And there is a link on the bottom of this slide for more information on the Court-Hold commitment and Court-Hold 2025. So just before I make a start, I just wanted to briefly mention our series of food waste prevention digests that will be available from this week. We recognise that we have an awful lot of information that isn't necessarily that easy to find, and these digests are a short, easy to read documents, interactive documents in PowerPoint format, and these will be available to download from the WRAP website and which will be regularly updated. They contain pop-up boxes, click-throughs and links, and where possible these go to this specific page in the report that's most relevant to you. And of course you will be able to access the information about product life through these digests. There are in fact 9 digests in the food series, plus we also have a secondary packaging optimisation digest. We've thought about our different audiences, for example, retailers, manufacturers and trade associations, and also about the different product categories and how they might use information in different ways, how we might want to encourage different types of action depending on the audience or category, or the fact that these different audiences and categories might have specific priorities or needs for specific information. So we hope that the digest will cater for all of these differences and that you will find them a really useful resource. So why would WRAP be interested in product life? Well, essentially it's because we consider reviewing and extending product life as a potential opportunity to help with food waste prevention, and hopefully these next few slides will explain why. So just in terms of some facts, in the UK each year we waste 15 million tonnes of food. 7 million tonnes of that comes from our homes. 4.1 million tonnes comes from manufacturing, retail and wholesale. And then in terms of reasons why we might focus on product life expiry is a key reason for food waste. And an estimated 1.3 to 2.6 million tonnes of food waste with a value of 3 to 6 billion arises in the supply chain and in the home due to date code expiry. So food waste due to date code expiry actually occurs mostly in our homes, which you'll see on a later slide, and that's one of the reasons why we're recommending that any extra life given to products is actually passed on to the consumer. So this slide shows the breakdown of that 15 million tonnes, and you can see that household food waste is the single largest contributor. And to help you visualise that, that would fill Wembley Stadium 9 times over the 7 million tonnes of household food waste. So hopefully you will agree that food waste is an issue that we all need to help tackle, both at home and at work, and extending product life is an opportunity to do this. Reducing food waste is important to consumers. This slide is taken from the FSA Biannual Public Attitudes Tracker Report, which is available on the food.gov.uk website, and these results are from May 2015. And this shows that when people were asked about concerns over wider food issues, food waste actually came out as number 2, and it is usually in the top 4 of this survey. This time round, it even ranked above the price of food, which is normally number 1. So research shows that consumers are not only concerned about wasting food, but they also expect and want the industry to help them to reduce food waste in their homes. So looking at things a little bit differently and considering the environmental impact of food, from a global point of view, if global food waste was a country, it would be the world's 3rd largest carbon emitter after only the USA and China, so 3 to 5% of the total global warming impacts, using 172 billion metres squared of water and utilising a land area equivalent to the size of Mexico and costing £616 billion to produce it. And then moving a bit closer to home, if the UK food waste was a country, it would emit 20 million tonnes of carbon dioxide equivalent emissions. It would be responsible for 4 to 5% of the total water footprint of the UK, and it would actually utilise a land area equivalent to the size of Wales and cost £19 billion to produce. So why is food waste prevention so important? And it is simply because it reduces the unnecessary waste of energy and natural resources which are used in the production, storage and distribution of food. It's also top of the food waste hierarchy, and companies have a duty of care to minimise waste in accordance with the waste hierarchy, which is enshrined in the EU Waste Framework Directive and also in the UK waste regulations. So taking action on food waste prevention will help you to comply with this legal requirement. So taking a closer look at the 7 million tonnes of household food waste, we split this into 3 categories. Unavoidable, for example, banana skins, bones and eggshells. Possibly avoidable, so things like potato and apple peelings and crusts of bread. And avoidable, so that's food that was edible at some point before it was thrown away. And as you would expect, our main focus of food waste prevention in the home is actually avoidable household food waste. So in terms of cost to consumers, the 4.2 million tonnes of avoidable food waste is actually worth £12.5 billion. And that's equivalent to the average household throwing away 6 meals per week, almost £60 a month. So food waste costs the average household with children £700 a year, almost £60 a month. Looking at the environmental impact, if we were to tackle avoidable household food waste, that would be like taking 1 in 4 cars off our roads. So looking at the reasons why we waste food at home, not used in time is the #1 reason given for avoidable household food waste. And at 2 million tonnes, it accounts for 5.6 billion of that 12.5 billion. So extending product life could help to reduce this waste. So looking at the weight of food waste attributed to date code expiry for both retail and household, this is 2.4 million tonnes, highlighted in the centre there, and that's worth 6.9 billion. And then finally, when we first got started in work in this area, we actually consulted industry in 2008, and shelf life extension was identified then as one of the top 3 priorities for action, and has in fact remained on the agenda ever since. So what work have we done on product life, and what have our findings been? Initially, back in 2012, we conducted a feasibility study that looked at how manufacturers and retailers set product life and how much of this time is taken up within the supply chain. Cheddar cheese and yoghurt were chosen as worked examples. And it was found that for cheese, there was a buffer of around 15% between the maximum shelf life and the actual shelf life given to the product. And whilst the maximum shelf life was determined through shelf life testing and point of failure, the buffer used to determine the actual life was in fact based on historical or in-house knowledge. And then similarly for yogurts, the buffer between the maximum and actual life was found to be around 20 to 25%. So this suggested that there could be opportunity to challenge and extend the actual product life that's given to some products. So following the feasibility study, we initiated some further work, and this was published earlier this year and is based on research carried out between September 2013 and September 2014. So what were the aims of this work? Firstly, we wanted to extend the work done in the feasibility study to extend to a wider range of products and identify the potential to reduce food waste by challenging product life. And also what we wanted to do was to provide information that could support change and encourage businesses to take action. So obviously making change was without compromising food safety or quality was and still is a key factor for consideration. You can increase product life in 3 different ways. That's either by challenging the buffer to product life and or open life, moving products faster through the chain, and changing product or packaging to increase product life. So our focus is on providing insights to challenge the first 2 on that list. In 2013, we carried out a survey of just over 23,000 products across 11 different product types. This was done in-store, and all major retailers were involved. We also did bespoke interviews with 23 leading manufacturers, 3 retailers, and 3 trade associations, plus a literature and trade press review. So as a summary, the work behind the report that we published looked at setting product life and open life, available life which was on shelf, open life on shelf, and then the business case for review and change. So this slide shows the web page that you can access the report from and the links at the bottom of the page. You can also access sets of slides from there and relevant case studies. So just to pick up on a few points on the slide, you can see here that there are 5 recommendations which I'll go through later, and everything's based on no changes to product or packaging, and also we've presented a business case for change in the report. So before I go any further, I just wanted to clarify the terminology that we use when we discuss product life. So you'll see here we talk about maximum life, which is effectively the maximum theoretical life of the product, the actual life that's given to the product, and then the available life, which is the life that's available to the consumer once they've bought the product in store, and then open life, which is obviously the life suggested when the product's been opened. So just to give a key summary of the findings of the work at a top level, so just 1 day increase in product life could actually save 250,000 tonnes of food waste in the UK on an annual basis. We're not suggesting that life can be extended by 1 day on all products. Some it won't be possible, others it might be more than 1 day, but this is really just to illustrate that a small amount can potentially have a big impact. And the results come from our sample of 10 products extrapolated across all food items. The business case in the report for extending life is actually based on preventing waste and saving its true cost, increased on-shelf availability, and increased sales and also customers trading up. And there are opportunities for extending product life without changing packaging and all the product formulations. And in fact, the potential direct business benefit for retailers that was identified was around £0.1 billion in waste prevention alone. So just to give you some examples of the information we found during the on-shelf survey, using sliced ham and chicken breasts as an example. So for sliced ham, we found, in terms of available life, a mean of 12.2 days, a minimum of 1 day, and a maximum of 23 days. And for chicken breasts, a mean of 4.7 days, a minimum of 0 days, so that would have been marked down for sale, and then a maximum of 9 days. So this really shows you the range of life available to consumers on shelf. for the consumers to choose from. And I think we're all probably guilty of looking for the product on the shelf with the longest life, which effectively increases the potential of shorter life products being left on shelf. Plus, the variance in the amount of life available can make it difficult for consumers to plan, not knowing how much life they will have when they do their shop. So suggested actions for this are investigating ways of reducing that range of dates on shelf to avoid the shorter shelf life products being left in favour of the longer shelf life stock, and providing consumers with appropriate storage and use guidance, particularly for products on promotion that might have a shorter life. So the results for open life were that open life guidance is widespread, but its use is inconsistent. Open life guidance is used for both safety and quality reasons, so is it necessary for it to be used for quality reasons? There seemed to be little clarity in open life on food safety concerns, whether there is a concern or not, and no clear or consistent open life declarations where extended open periods could present a food safety risk. So again, the potential actions there were about removing open life data except where there is a food safety concern, extending open life to its maximum, particularly where comparable products are already using a longer open life, and then reviewing any products that prevent a consumer from keeping them for up to 2 days after opening, for example, chicken breast salad and chicken kebabs, which were part of the survey. So through this recent work, we've identified 5 key ways for retailers and manufacturers to take action. The first one being about challenging product safety and quality buffers that are in place that could be overly cautious. So for the products that we studied, we found that the buffers did vary in significance. So we would suggest that you ask, what buffers do you have in place for your products? Where do they come from? Do they relate to product safety or quality? When was the last time you reviewed them? What would you need to do and who would you need to involve in challenging these buffers? And can you extend the life of any of your products even by just 1 day? And how can we have a consistent approach to setting life in your category of products? So next we have about developing a more consistent approach to open life setting. So again, the questions that we might suggest are, do you need open life on your product for food safety reasons? If so, how do you decide what it should be? Did you make sure that you gave the customer as long as possible to use the products? Have you looked at open life guidance on similar products? Are there differences, and if so, why? What needs to be done and who needs to be involved to ensure a consistent approach, giving a clear and consistent message to consumers for comparable products? And then we have increasing the product life available for consumers when the product is actually purchased through supply chain improvements. So, as I've just said, we found that shoppers are faced with a wide range of available life on shelf, which potentially encourages consumers to search for the longest life and can also making planning meals difficult when you don't know how much life will be on the products when you're buying them from week to week. The reasons for this wide range are complex, we understand that. Do you understand what these reasons are and the impact they can have? Can you review your processes, for example, shelf replenishment, stock rotation, markdown procedures? And is there anything that can be done to improve that range of dates that are on shelf? Can you work with your customers and suppliers to identify opportunities for change and also implement them? And then how would you measure where you are now and any improvements made? Do you have the relevant KPIs? We have improving delivery performance of products into depots so that consumers can potentially have more of that time. So this would be with the aim of giving consumers more available life, more of the time. So we know that MLOR is a KPI, and we found that performance was varied. Can there be a collaborative effort to improve performance, including daily negotiations? How will you identify potential for improvement, and who needs to be involved? Can RAP help in bringing organisations together to identify these opportunities and agree action? And then lastly, we thought we would take the opportunity just to reinforce one of our recommendations that we already make, and that's about reducing the inconsistency in date coding. So do your products comply with RAP's recommendations for date labelling? Do you know what the recommendations are? and can you make changes to comply? And you will see on the bottom of this slide there is a link to a document which you can download, which actually includes our date labelling recommendations. So hopefully all of that has given you some food for thought. And now I'm going to hand over to Will Prestwich, who is going to talk to us about some of the work that Co-op have done with product life of crisps.
Okay, thanks a lot for that, Sue. Thanks, Helen, for hosting today. Good morning, everyone. My name's Will Prestwich, and I'm going to talk to you about the crisps waste reduction work that we've done within the Co-operative Food to try and improve the waste performance and also mean that consumers have longer life, as discussed. Just before I go into that, I'm just going to give a quick overview of what we've been doing to try and work towards a court-hold agreement as well. So we've done three things mainly, one of which is try and reduce the amount of packaging that we've got going through our supply chain, and where packaging is within the supply chain, such as cardboard, trying to increase the amount that we're actually recycling within there. We're also working with charities to actually, where we've got products that are going out of code and at the end of their code life, once they're leaving a store effectively, whereas previously they could potentially have gone in the bin. We're now working with charities to actually give that food to them so that they can then give that to people who maybe don't have access to it usually. So it just means that that product is then used rather than thrown away and actually just ends up as waste and ends up in landfill or with anaerobic digestion. And the other thing we're looking to do is trying to improve the shelf life that we get throughout our supply chain from end to end. So from suppliers delivering us with the maximum possible life all the way through to the depots, trying to turn that round in the quickest possible time, and then the stores actually being able to sell that with the most possible life to the consumer, so that when consumers get that home, they can then use that product and not find that it's gone out of date by the time they come to actually use it. So all of those things should help us move towards the court-hold agreement, and obviously with the next set of challenges that come up with the next phase, we'll be looking at what more we can do for that. So if I could just have the next slide, please. I'll just go through the waste reduction that's taken place within the cooperative. Basically, from this work that we've done, waste is £301,000 better year on year, which equates to 0.38% improvement. Retail waste is running at 1.61% of our sales, and it's a result of a collaborative partnership between the commercial function, our supply chain function, and Walker's Crisps. And from this, a number of initiatives have been focused on to try and drive the waste reduction throughout each of the companies. And through having a more collaborative approach, it means that the whole processes within our area of the business is more joined up, and it means that everyone sort of sees sight of what's happening from a promotional point of view, from them being able to plan the promotions better, plan the stock holding better, and also mean that we get fewer reductions and bin waste in store. Next slide, please. So in terms of the initial starting point, what we were doing was identifying the high wasting lines, the slow selling lines, and the sales opportunities where, for example, we've got high performing lines in a low depth of distribution. So these lines could be selling well in a few stores, but then we would look to then push them out into more stores and look at those lines where they might at the top level be selling fairly well, but actually they're causing a lot of waste in certain stores. So we'd actually look at how we then improve that performance then through using our ranking tools, reducing them down, and using S-flags, which I'll go into in more detail in a minute. So what we mainly did was use ranged events to make changes. So each 6 or 12 weeks we have range events within our categories. But for Chris, every 6 weeks, what we do is review the range and then actually look at how then we can improve the performance both from a sales and from a wastage point of view. And what we've got within the cooperative group is a system called S-flags. These allow products to be removed from high wasting stores. So you can still have them in a lot of stores where they sell well and the waste is quite low, but from that low base where you might have, say, between 10 and 100 stores that might be causing a problem because they are heavily wasting that product, we can actually remove it from those stores with no negative impact on the wastage or the sales line. Actually, you'd see an improved performance. Next slide, please. So In terms of the work we did with supply chain, we identified any supply chain overstocks that are caused by promotions, because what we found within crisps is quite cyclical, and that any line that is on promotion tends to sell the best because people are more price sensitive within crisps, and they're not as although the brands are important, they will switch quite easily. What the effect of this was, by looking at how we exit promotions, we had a reduced amount of promotional stock left over, because what tends to happen is once that promotional stock is left over, it then gets reduced, and then that takes away from the promotional stock that's come in, and also takes away from full value sales. So you just end up in a reduced to clear cycle with a lot of stock, which is obviously not ideal for companies, especially where you've got small stores that might be holding quite a lot of this crisp stock in the back, and then they're trying to turn it over quickly, but they can't get the fresher stock out because they've not sold the previous stock. So the effect is we had lower residual stocks post-promotion, still maintain the same level of sales, but we just got the lower waste from the excess stock. And it also meant that we could focus on driving the full price sales, because we have less reduced to clear promotional stock available for the customers to buy as well. And it means that customers get longer life on their products. So if we just move on to the next slide. The other things that we were looking at doing was reviewing presentation levels. So what we have within our business on our ordering system, once a product gets below a certain level, which we deem as a presentable level to the customer, then the system will reorder. So what we were trying to do is, on high wasting lines, actually make sure that they were appropriate. So we were not having high levels of presentation levels on the products. That meant that we were just driving cases and cases into stores that we then couldn't sell. And so what we did was we reduced these where they were bringing stock in that would take longer than half of the product's shelf life to sell through. And so in that instance, what it would do is it would just mean that we would bring a case in when most of the stock's actually sold out, rather than trying to keep repeatedly bring it in once we've breached a certain level, whereas actually it might be a slow seller. So we're not having as much stock in, and we've got longer to actually sell it. What it does is it allows us to carry lower stock levels in store, and means that you're continually getting fresher products, and you're not carrying that excess stock. So if we just go on to the next slide, what the impact of this was, through having the lower stock in store, we were able to reduce the amount of days depot stock days depot stock. So we had lower cover on all the lines in the depots, and this meant that we could again bring in fresher products. We're not sitting on product for a long time, which means that it then goes into store with a short shelf life, and it just allowed us to maximise the life on crisps that were being brought into our stores. With this longer life, we're getting fewer reductions. There's more time available to sell the product at full price to the customer, get better sales, and less product goes in the bin, and there'll be less household waste because consumers won't be buying it with that shorter life on it. So if we just move on to the next slide, what we also worked on was we worked on a partnership with Walkers, because obviously within the cooperative, Walkers are our biggest supplier of crisps, and what we did was, by having that ability to actually then say that we could work with Walkers, we could then target the key lines within their range that were actually causing the problem. So we could actually then focus as well from a promotional point of view on driving sales on the promotional lines, and also reducing the amount of stock from promotions that we were getting free from them. We had regular meetings with them, and still do, to ensure focus from both companies on reducing waste. And what we did was we created an action log which is compiled and updated. So within the meeting, we go through the action log, document any actions that have been taken, then also add anything else that needs adding onto the list, and just keep both companies focused on that long-term goal of reducing waste, because from their point of view as well, they've got a better stock turnover. They're not just keep driving product into us that won't get sold. They've got a better brand perception from a freshness and quality point of view, and so it works because long-term they'll drive their sales as well. And what it also gave us was shared ideas and ownership of trying to reduce waste, because through the shared ownership, it meant that both companies were constantly trying to come up with new plans, and also they would then learn from what they've done with ourselves and apply that across the industry. And although that wouldn't necessarily benefit us from a point of view of further benefits, it would actually help from a overall waste point of view, because it means that other companies will be benefiting from the work that we're doing. They get less promotional stock, they'd be reviewing things like average shelf life and total shelf life, and also looking at things like case sizes, which they could try and look to reduce, particularly as the convenience market's becoming more and more important. And as well, with people ordering online, they want to receive a freshness and quality of product that they might not get if stores are just trying to get rid of their reduced to clear products. So if we move on to the next slide, some of the further things we did with Walkers, we reduced stock levels on lines impacted by promotions. We avoided running conflicting promotions as well, so where you've got two products that are fairly similar, we tried to avoid running them on promotion at the same time, because all you tended to do is cannibalise sales and just leave a lot of stock left over at the end. We focused on lines of high bin waste to try and reduce their depth of distribution, delist them, or just take them out of stores where they're not actually working, so we can actually allow those stores to perform better in terms of their crisp sales and waste performance. We also increased depth of distribution on high performing lines, and we shared and focused on the top 25 waste lines to continually improve the reduced to clear and bin waste performance through depth of distribution, stock levels, S-flags and the promotional activity. And by having this rolling top 25 lines, again, it just keeps the focus on making sure we've got the right lines that we're actually looking at, the right lines that we're trying to drive down the waste on, and maintaining an overall focus on the wastage. So if we go on to the next slide, that pretty much sums up in terms of where we are with Walkers and what we've been doing, and that's an ongoing piece of work, and it will be a long-term collaborative piece of work. And it's something that can then be applied across other areas and across other suppliers. So further work that's required, we just need to reduce the amount of stock left over post-Christmas, because what we tend to find with crisps is that they don't sell as well post-Christmas because people are focused on healthy eating. So what you have is you have a lot of stock from sales that we've attempted to get over Christmas. Then that's not sold because people don't want to buy it. They want to live a healthy lifestyle, and because of that, in January we see quite a big wastage bill. So that's something we're looking to try and address in terms of targeting the right lines to reduce stock on going into Christmas, so that we've got less in the new year, so that we're not then wasting those products out. Another thing that's being worked on, reduce case sizes, because what that will allow is for a quicker turnover of cases in small convenience stores. It also leads to fresher, better quality product. And because, like I said earlier, we've got more of a focus on convenience stores within our business and also across the industry now, because there's quite a big growth in that area. It just means that by having these smaller case sizes, it means you can actually just turn the stock over quicker, and you have to hold less stock in your stores. So your stock holding costs are reduced, and you've just got more time that the consumers can then have to actually consume that product. Because with crisps, you've got on average 8 weeks from it being received to then going into stores and consumers having to eat it. So the more life we can give to the consumer, the better. And the other thing we're looking at getting is longer guaranteed shelf life, because what that does is it gives stores more time to sell the crisps to the consumer, and again gives consumers more time to enjoy the product. So that's actually ensuring that the amount of life we get when we receive it into our depots is the maximum it can possibly be, and it just gives depots that extra bit of leeway then when they're trying to turn the product over, to actually then push that out to the consumers with the maximum possible life. So in terms of the work we've done, that just gives a quick summary and a quick flavour of what we've done. So I hope that's been beneficial for everyone, and just given everyone an overview of what we've done within the cooperative and what can be applied across the industry and across other suppliers to help us meet the court-hold agreements in terms of reducing wastage.
Thanks very much, Will, for speaking to us about that today. For anyone that would like to ask Will any questions, he will be available at the end of the session during our Q&A section. So just to finish off, I just wanted to talk to you about how we are suggesting that industry might use our recommended opportunities to take action, and also about some guidance that will be available in the next few weeks that might help you, or might be helpful for you in terms of making a start. So what are we asking you to do. We understand that all the products will be different and that some products change, for some products change may not be appropriate, plus change in some products will have more impact than others. So for example, a shorter life product versus a long life product. So what we're asking you to do is to work with us and the rest of the industry to take a collaborative and consistent approach to review your products and processes, challenge existing protocols, take any appropriate action that you've identified, and also, importantly, to embed change, and all without compromising food safety or product quality. And just a little bit of a reminder that even just one more day could make a big difference. So we recognise that different organisations can each play a different role. And so bearing in mind the 5 opportunities involved, how do you think that you can help? What do you think your role is, and what action can you take, and how can you help to implement action and embed change? So essentially, we're asking you to consider these questions and act on the answers. So RAP has a role to play as well. We can help raise awareness of recommendations. So, for example, doing webinars like we are today. We can provide a business case, which is part of the recent report. We can encourage collaboration, facilitate change, and also help to embed change as well. So if you were to make a start today, we would suggest that you discuss this opportunity with your business, talk to your suppliers and customers, agree what action you can take, and also, importantly for us, tell us what action you're taking so that we can spread best practice. So finally, I just wanted to highlight to you some guidance documents that will be published over the next few weeks. And these are in fact a recommendation of our Court Hold 3 Industry Working Group, which is focused on achieving the Court Hold 3 targets. And product life is in fact one of the focus areas of this group. So there will be 2 sets of guidance, one based around challenging existing protocols and setting product and open life, and the other one is about investigating and implementing supply chain improvements to increase the product life available to consumers. The next few slides will give you an idea of the structure and format of these guidance documents, which are currently work in progress and still in draft form at the moment. So starting with the guidance around product life setting, our approach is to focus on, so from our 5 recommendations, the top 2, which is on challenging existing product life and open life setting protocols. The objective of the guidance is to encourage action by essentially demonstrating how this might be achieved. And the format that we're proposing is a clear and concise document, which is obviously important, an introduction in terms of how to use the document, and then there will be an overview of a 5-step recommended process with guidance for each step, and a worked example illustrating how the guidance could be used, plus a template for capturing information at each stage. And then just a little reminder there, based on no changes to product or packaging. So this slide shows an example of the proposed 5-step process. Starting at the top, you can see stage 1, which is about fact-finding and identifying potential products, gathering information on existing product life, and then identifying any considerations, for example, food safety, quality, and legal considerations. Stage 2 is about opportunity identification, so identifying any potential opportunities, quantifying any benefits, and then identifying who needs to be involved, both inside the business and outside. Stage 3, which is a really important stage, is about validation. So identifying validation requirements for extending life, obviously completing that validation, reviewing the results and deciding what to do next. And then stage 4 is an implementation stage. So implementation, monitoring and reviewing, and then also the calculating the actual benefits that have been achieved. So followed by step 5, which is reviewing and embedding. So that's obviously engaging with the business, raising awareness, identifying any further opportunity, and then embedding regular review into policy and procedures. And then also potentially identifying any longer term changes which might involve changes to products and packaging. So next we have a slide which, as an example, shows some of the draft suggestions for how to go about stage 1. And there will actually be one of these for each stage. So starting on the left-hand side of the slide, you'll see that we have a section on what to consider. Then we have how to find out, and then also who to involve. And what we also have at the bottom of the slide is for each stage we will have what we're proposing the outcomes might be and what you would need before you go on to the next stage. So for example here we're suggesting that the outcome of this stage is an agreed list of products to be reviewed, key facts about the product's life, and also details of the initial discussions with key stakeholders. And included in the guidance there will be a worked example which will illustrate how this process can be used. So when dealing with product life setting, we recognise how important it is to record the information collated during the decision-making process to be able to back up your decision if you need to. So whether it's extending life or not extending life, and the reasons why. So as part of the guidance, we will be providing a template to help you to capture this information, and the worked example will include a completed version of this for reference. Now moving on to the second guidance document, which as you can see here is about identifying the potential to increase the life available to consumers. Again, this is a short document. The first page highlights which roles in a business could influence this and the types of areas that can be investigated, as many people might not realise that they can influence food waste in their role. The next page confirms our definitions and also talks about redistribution. And then the next 2 pages of the guidance are actually split into manufacturers and retailers, with suggested questions that can be used to identify potential opportunities for action. And this one just shows the manufacturer one, but you can see at the bottom there is a retailer page as well. And then finally, the last page will include links to relevant case studies. So hopefully that was a useful overview of the proposed guidance documents. They will be available on the Product Life webpage in the next few weeks, and we hope that you will find them useful. So that brings us to the end of today's presentation. So we'll now move on to a quick Q&A session. Thank you to those that have sent questions in. Please remember that Will is here to answer any questions that you might have for him. So we have actually got a question here for Will. So hopefully we're just going to unmute him. The question, Will, is really asking about whether there's any resistance from walkers regarding working with them to provide more available life. Did they have any concerns that you had to overcome?
Well, initially it was quite difficult because we were dealing with a couple of account managers who weren't as focused on the account, and what we've managed to get is an account manager now who's actually focused on reducing waste. So because we've got continual dialogue with them about ideas that we're doing and actually sharing about the work we're doing within our supply chain to actually try and improve the life that their products receiving, they're more open to making changes within within what they actually do. Obviously, you'll find this with a lot of suppliers, especially particularly branded suppliers, that because they've got standard pack sizes and standard shelf lives, in a lot of cases, initially they will be resistant. But what we've had to do is do a lot of work in the background to obviously show what we're doing in terms of trying to improve the whole end-to-end supply chain life performance. And also, I think as well, because of the shift in the market towards convenience, some of that has actually helped towards shift their thinking towards actually trying to reduce waste, improve product freshness. So that's another factor that has helped us. And just having regular meetings with them to maintain the focus is one of the key things, because before we had a regular meeting, obviously we were doing a lot of work internally, but then since we've got walkers on board as well, there's been a real drive towards trying to reduce wastage and working around the promotional packages and things like that, and how they can help us to actually make these changes within our business to then improve the overall performance.
That's great. Well, thanks for that. It's really nice to hear about food waste prevention in action, as it were. One of the things that I just wanted to ask is, in terms of your learnings from the crisps work, do you think that you're going to be able to extend that to other products?
I think it can be, I think from what we've done and the collaboration we did, I think it can be applied across other areas within ambient and also within fresh as well. Because effectively all you're trying to do is improve the performance of their products as well as the performance in your stores, because what you're doing is actually improving their brand performance by giving customers better quality perception, as well as at the same time driving your own sales. So I think if you can demonstrate to them the benefits that they will receive through increased sales, you know, better brand performance, and also better uptake on promotions as well, I think that you can get a lot of companies bought into actually doing this. And although it might take a bit of work in terms of making sure you've got regular meetings with the account managers, making sure you've got an action log that you stick to, and a few initial upfront costs, if you can then show them the benefits it will deliver, a lot of companies will be willing to work with you. So there's no reason I can't see this being applied to other areas such as biscuits, you know, which have a shorter life, and then as you go along, things like chocolate and etc. I don't think there's any reason why that can't then be expanded outwards and become sort of standard practice across the industries of working with suppliers to improve overall performance.
That's great. That's really good to hear. Thanks, Will. We did have just a couple of other questions here. So one of the questions is about whether RAP will be doing any other work on product life in the future. So the answer to that is that yes, we will. Product life has been identified as one of the areas that we will look at under Court Hold 2025. So it's very much a sort of watch this space. And then just one last question is whether we have any priority areas. So that sort of follows on from what Will's just been saying in terms of products. So yes, we do have priority categories. So for example, fresh produce, meat, fish and poultry. But obviously we do realise that some products are higher risk than others in terms of shelf life extension. So just really encouraging people to take action where they can. So that brings us to the end of the Q&A session. So thanks to those people that sent those questions in. And then just briefly, before we finish off, I just wanted to give you a reminder about a few items that will be coming soon. We have our Food Waste Prevention Digest that I mentioned, and then also the Secondary Packaging Optimisation Digest. We have a signposting tool, which is actually a sort of overarching digest that contains useful information on food waste prevention, not just from RAP, but from other organisations as well. And that will actually be hosted on other organisations' websites as well as RAP. And then obviously we have the product life guidance, which I've just talked about. And then we do have other webinars in this series. So we've been running 6 webinars over the last 10 days, and you will be able to access the recordings and the slides from the RAP website. So now I'm just going to hand over to Helen to close the session.
Thanks, Sue. Finally, just to say thank you for your time attending our webinar today, and we hope that you found it an interesting overview of the product life work. Also, again, thanks to Will and also for staying online for the question and answers. At the beginning of the session, we said that the webinar's been recorded and will be published, and as Sue mentioned, this will be available with the other webinars in the series. We will send you a link to this following the session. If you do have any other questions or comments, please do send us an email at the email address which is on the screen, which is foodspecialist@rap.org.uk, and we'll try and get back to you as soon as we can. Thanks again. Goodbye.